My name is Linda Carter, and I am 48 years old. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, where every morning, the streets are lined with maple trees, and the soft chirping of birds blends with the distant laughter of children playing in nearby parks. I always believed that family forms the foundation of life, an unshakable anchor of love, patience, and understanding. I thought that no matter what challenges came our way, my relationship with my son, Ethan, would remain steadfast. I was wrong. Ethan is 22 years old, a bright, ambitious, and incredibly charismatic young man. He has always been able to light up a room with his presence, to charm people effortlessly, and to convey confidence that sometimes feels overwhelming. But along with his brilliance came stubbornness, a fierce determination to get what he wanted, and a growing sense of entitlement that I had perhaps failed to recognize over the years. Until recently, our disagreements were minor, teenage tantrums, arguments about responsibilities, disputes over money. Nothing seemed irreparable. I believed that love and reasoning would always guide him. Everything changed with a seemingly simple request, an expensive gift. Ethan had been saving from his part-time job, but he fell short for the latest high-end gaming setup, a combination of hardware and software that cost over $2,500. When he approached me that evening, I noticed a new intensity in his eyes, a mix of excitement, expectation, and determination. "Mom," he began, his voice calm but insistent, "I've been saving, but I'm still a little short. Could you cover the rest?" My stomach tightened. I had prepared for requests like this in theory, but the reality hit differently. I knew this wasn't merely about money, it was about control, about testing boundaries, and about pushing me to say yes when I knew the answer had to be no. "Ethan," I said carefully, "I can't. You know I've always encouraged you to work for what you want. This is your responsibility." His eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "But Mom, it's just a few $100s. You've done so much for me already." I took a deep breath. "I know, sweetheart, but that doesn't mean I should give in every time. You need to understand the value of effort and responsibility." He stared at me, jaw tightening. "I can't believe you, Mom. You don't get it at all." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, memories and doubts swirling in my mind. I thought about the years of small compromises, the times I had softened my stance to avoid conflict, the moments when I had allowed him to win just to keep the peace. Had I inadvertently taught him that threats and pressure would bend my will? The next few days were tense. Ethan became distant, withdrawn, his words clipped, and his presence heavy with unspoken resentment. I tried to engage him, to understand his feelings, but every attempt seemed to drive him further away. I confided in my best friend, Margaret, who has been a steadfast confidant. "You've always been too soft on him, Linda," she said cautiously. "Maybe he's testing boundaries, trying to see if you'll crack." Her words stung, but I knew there was truth in them. I had always believed gentle guidance would suffice, that love alone could steer him toward maturity. But Ethan was showing me that love has limits when faced with manipulation and entitlement. One afternoon, while tidying the living room, I noticed a folded piece of paper on my desk. My hands trembled as I opened it. In bold, angry handwriting, it read, "If you don't get me that gift, I don't see why I should stay here anymore. I'll make other arrangements." My heart sank. At first, I thought it was dramatic posturing, a fleeting tantrum. But the certainty behind the words left no room for doubt. Ethan was serious. He was attempting to leverage fear of loss to control me. That night, I could not sleep. I reflected on every moment that led us here, the laughter, arguments, lessons I tried to teach about responsibility, and the times I softened my approach to avoid conflict. I questioned my parenting, wondering if compassion had backfired, creating a son who believed threats could bend reality to his will. The following morning, I resolved to confront Ethan directly. Avoiding the issue would only empower him further, and I was determined to assert clear boundaries. I called him into the living room. He entered, arms crossed, defensive. "Ethan," I began, "we need to talk. I saw your note. I want you to understand why I said no, and I want a proper conversation, not threats. His eyes flashed with frustration. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? It's just a gift. No, it's not just a gift, I said firmly. It's about respect, responsibility, and understanding consequences. I cannot give in to threats, and I will not. I love you, but you need to understand there are limits. He scoffed, standing abruptly. Limits? You mean you're controlling me? I can't believe you, Mom. I thought you'd understand me. It was at that moment I realized this conflict was not about a gift. It was about power, boundaries, and respect. Our bond, which I thought was unshakable, was being tested in ways I never anticipated. Over the next several days, Ethan's behavior escalated. He stayed out late without informing me, returned home silently, and left subtle threats around the house. I tried to remain composed, but each attempt to diffuse tension seemed to intensify his defiance. I spoke to my sister, Joanne, who has always been a voice of reason in our family. Linda, you have to stand firm, she advised. He's testing boundaries. You can't give in, or he'll see that he can control you with threats. Her words resonated, but the fear that Ethan might leave, or worse, that our relationship might fracture permanently, was suffocating. I spent hours reflecting, analyzing interactions, and questioning choices I made over the past 22 years of his life. One evening, the tension reached a breaking point. Ethan confronted me in the kitchen, his voice sharp, accusatory, and brimming with defiance. You think you can control me, Mom? I'm not a child anymore. I can make my own decisions. I know you're not a child, Ethan, I replied calmly but firmly. Being an adult means understanding responsibility. It means respecting boundaries. It does not mean demanding what you want with threats or ultimatums. He slammed his hand on the counter, the sound echoing through the room, and I felt the weight of our fractured dynamic pressing down. It wasn't violence I feared, it was the erosion of our relationship, the possibility that trust and love could be permanently damaged. I reflected on the journey that led us here, the moments of joy, laughter, tears, and small conflicts that now culminated in this overwhelming storm. I realized this was not a simple disagreement. It was a defining moment, a pivotal chapter that would determine the course of our mother-son relationship for years to come. Little did I know, the events that followed would push both of us to our limits. The simple request for a gift had evolved into a test of character, boundaries, and love. Ethan was about to reveal a side of himself I had never witnessed before, and the choices I made in the coming days would shape the trajectory of our lives forever. The morning after our confrontation, the house felt colder somehow. It wasn't the temperature, it was the silence, the absence of casual conversation that had once filled every corner of our home. I could feel tension coiling like a snake around every room. Ethan was already awake, moving through the kitchen with a quiet, purposeful intensity that unsettled me. His eyes avoided mine, yet there was an unspoken challenge in every step he took. I tried to make breakfast, to maintain normalcy, but even the act of cracking eggs seemed fragile, tentative. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching my every movement as though waiting for me to falter. Mom, he said finally, breaking the silence, I'm going out. Don't worry about me. I nodded, trying to sound calm. Just be responsible, Ethan. Remember, trust is earned. He smirked, a subtle twist of his mouth that told me he wasn't thinking about trust at all. He was thinking about how far he could push, what he could manipulate, and how he might assert his independence on his own terms. As he left, I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee mug, trying to process the storm that was building. I knew that allowing him to leave and return at will was dangerous, yet I also understood that constant confrontation could escalate the conflict. I had to choose my battles carefully, to navigate the delicate path between discipline and connection. That afternoon, I received a text from Ethan, I'm staying at a friend's tonight. Don't wait up. The casualness of it sent a shiver down my spine. The words were simple, almost mundane, but the intent behind them was clear. He was testing the limits of control, asserting independence while simultaneously signaling defiance. I called my sister Joanne immediately. He's escalating, I said, voice shaking. He left a note, now a text, and I don't know if he plans to come back tonight. I feel like I'm losing control. Joanne's voice was firm, comforting. Linda, you're not losing control. You're setting boundaries. Remember, it's not about fear, it's about principles. Stand firm. Principles. I repeated the word in my mind like a mantra, but the emotional strain was growing heavier by the hour. I felt the weight of years pressing down, the years of nurturing, guiding, compromising, and teaching responsibility, all at risk of unraveling over a single, expensive gift. That evening, Ethan returned home later than expected. I waited in the living room, heart pounding, unsure if I should greet him or confront him immediately. He walked in casually, as if nothing had happened, dropping his backpack by the door. Ethan, I began, keeping my tone measured, we need to talk. Your behavior over the past few days isn't acceptable. Leaving without notice, avoiding communication, and the note you left, this isn't how responsible adults behave. He rolled his eyes, flopping onto the sofa. Mom, you're overreacting. It's not a big deal. I'm just living my life. Living your life doesn't mean disrespecting your family, I said firmly. It doesn't mean threatening me to get what you want. You need to understand the consequences of your actions. His smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flash of frustration. Consequences? You mean control. You can't tell me what to do all the time. I'm an adult. I could feel my pulse quickening. The conversation was spiraling, the tension thickening into something almost tangible. Being an adult isn't just about making demands. It's about accountability, respect, and understanding limits. Right now, you are testing those limits in ways that are hurtful and unfair. He stared at me, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, without warning, he stood abruptly and stormed toward his room. The door slammed behind him with a force that shook the frame, reverberating through the house and through my heart. I sat there, trying to calm my racing thoughts, reminding myself that patience and strategy were crucial. But the fear lingered, fear that Ethan's defiance would escalate beyond verbal confrontation, fear that our relationship could suffer irreparable damage. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Ethan would push boundaries, test limits, and retreat to his room when challenged. I noticed subtle changes in his behavior. He became more secretive, spending hours online, communicating with friends in ways that excluded me. The note, the threat, the casual defiance, it was all escalating, creating a psychological tension that made even small interactions fraught with potential conflict. One evening, I decided to try a different approach. Instead of confrontation, I attempted dialogue, open, calm, and honest. Ethan, I said, sitting outside his room, I want to understand how you feel. I know you're frustrated, and I know you're angry about the gift. But we need to communicate respectfully. I'm not your enemy. I'm your mother, and I love you. There was a long silence. Then, a door cracked open, and Ethan appeared, eyes dark, lips pressed tightly. You don't get it, Mom. You never do. I work hard, I save money, and I want this thing I've been dreaming about. Why is that so hard for you to understand? It's not the wanting, Ethan, I said, trying to stay calm, it's the method. Threatening me, trying to manipulate me, thinking you can bend my will, it's not acceptable. We can find a solution together, but not like this. His expression twisted, a mixture of anger and hurt. Solution? The solution is simple, you just say yes. I'm your son. Don't you care about what I want? I care, I replied softly, more than you realize. That's why I'm saying no. Because love isn't just about giving in. It's about teaching, guiding, and sometimes saying no when it's necessary for your growth. The room was silent for a long time. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the conflict between desire and understanding, between rebellion and recognition of boundaries. That night, I reflected on the events of the past week. I realized that this struggle wasn't just about a gift, about money, or even about control. It was about identity, Ethan asserting his independence, and me asserting the principles I believed were necessary for his growth. The tension was a clash of values, of expectations, of generational perspectives. The following day, Ethan's defiance reached a new level. He refused to eat breakfast with the family, stayed in his room for hours, and ignored every attempt at conversation. I felt the isolation, the emotional distance, growing wider by the minute. I confided in Margaret again, who reminded me, "Linda, this is a test. Stand firm. You're doing the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it." I realized she was right. Giving in now would set a dangerous precedent, one that would make him believe manipulation was a tool for achieving his desires. I had to maintain my position, even as the emotional storm intensified. That evening, a new message appeared on my phone. It was from Ethan. "I don't know why I should stay here if you're going to treat me like a child. Maybe it's time I find my own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and sorrow. The thought of my son leaving, or feeling pushed out, was unbearable. Yet, I understood that this declaration was part of the escalation, part of the struggle for control and independence. I decided to take a deep breath, to prepare for a conversation that could define the coming weeks. I sat in the living room, rehearsing my words, reminding myself of patience, strategy, and empathy. When Ethan entered, I was ready. "Ethan," I said calmly, "I want to hear you out. I understand that you feel frustrated, that you want independence and respect. But threatening to leave, trying to force me into giving you what you want, this is not the way to resolve conflicts. We can talk. We can negotiate. But we do it with respect." He hesitated, then sat across from me, eyes dark but attentive. For the first time in days, there was a hint of willingness to listen. "I feel like you don't trust me, Mom. You're making everything a big deal. I'm an adult. Why can't you just let me do what I want?" "I do trust you, Ethan," I said, reaching out gently, "but trust doesn't mean ignoring principles. It doesn't mean threatening the people who love you to get your way. I want to help you learn, grow, and make responsible choices, not just hand you what you desire." He looked away, conflicted, the storm inside him palpable. I realized that beneath the anger and defiance was vulnerability, fear of not being understood, fear of losing autonomy, and the challenge of stepping into adulthood with all its responsibilities. The night grew late, and we remained in tense silence, the kind that is heavy with unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and the weight of a week filled with conflict. I knew the coming days would be critical, that our choices now would shape the trajectory of our relationship, and that navigating this storm would require courage, patience, and unwavering commitment to principles and love. Little did I know that the next escalation, the event that would truly test both of us, was imminent, and that it would push the boundaries of our mother-son relationship to its limits, forcing decisions that neither of us could have anticipated. The next morning, the air in our house was thick with unspoken tension. I could feel it pressing down on my shoulders, a weight that seemed almost physical. Ethan had barely spoken since our long discussion the night before, retreating to his room and locking the door behind him. I tried to continue my daily routine, making breakfast, tidying up, answering emails, but the silence felt oppressive. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of a newspaper, seemed amplified. By late morning, I heard the familiar hum of his computer booting up, the faint tapping of keys. I knew he was online, probably communicating with friends, perhaps strategizing his next move. A small pang of fear struck me. What if he acted on his words, left the house, or worse, held a grudge that could fracture our bond forever? I tried calling him, gently, softly. "Ethan, can we talk?" No response. I sent a text, carefully worded, as if the words themselves could bridge the chasm that had opened between us. "I want to understand your feelings. Let's discuss this calmly. I love you." Minutes passed. No reply. Hours later, I heard the unmistakable sound of his bedroom door opening. He emerged, pacing, his face flushed with a mix of anger and determination. He stopped abruptly and looked at me, eyes blazing. "Mom, I've made a decision," he said, his voice steady but intense. "I can't stay here if you're going to control every aspect of my life. I need my independence. I need to make my own choices, even if it means leaving." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. This was it, the moment I had feared yet anticipated. "Ethan," I said slowly, "leaving is a big step. I understand your desire for independence, but I also need you to understand the consequences. This isn't just about a gift or a disagreement, this is about respect, responsibility, and love. If you leave, it doesn't mean I'll stop loving you, but it changes everything. Are you ready for that?" He hesitated, visibly wrestling with the gravity of his words. I think I am. I need to grow. I need to be on my own. Staying here feels like I'm suffocating." I swallowed hard. I knew this was more than just a test, this was a turning point. My instincts told me to step in, to hold him close, but I reminded myself that love sometimes means letting go. "Ethan," I said, my voice calm but firm, "if you choose to leave, I will support you, but I need a commitment. You must respect this home and understand that trust isn't given lightly. It's earned." He looked at me, conflicted. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, the realization that independence comes with responsibility, that freedom isn't without boundaries. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Ethan began packing his belongings, his movements methodical, yet tinged with anxiety. I helped in small ways, guiding him without imposing, offering advice only when asked. We navigated a delicate balance of autonomy and support, each of us adjusting to a new dynamic. During this time, we talked more than we had in weeks. Conversations were honest, sometimes tense, but always grounded in a shared love. We discussed his plans, his ambitions, his fears. I listened, offering perspective, but refrained from judgment. I realized that this was not just about Ethan leaving the house, it was about him stepping into adulthood, and me learning to let go. On the day he was set to leave, the house was filled with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow. I watched as he carried boxes to his car, each movement a reminder of the years that had brought us here. Finally, he turned to me, his eyes soft, the fire of defiance replaced by vulnerability. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know I've made mistakes. I've been selfish, and I let anger guide me. I'm sorry." I stepped forward, embracing him tightly. "Ethan, I've always known you are capable of great things. Mistakes are part of life, but learning from them is what matters. I love you, and I always will. Remember that." He nodded, holding back tears, and for a moment, it felt like the storm that had dominated our lives for weeks had passed. The drive to his new apartment was filled with tentative conversation. He shared his excitement, his nervousness, and I offered encouragement, emphasizing the importance of responsibility and careful planning. When we arrived, he stepped out, surveying the space that would soon become his home. "Are you ready for this?" I asked gently. He took a deep breath, a smile breaking across his face. "I think I am, Mom. Thanks for believing in me, even when I didn't make it easy." We spent the afternoon unpacking, arranging, and decorating. It was a strange sense of closure and beginning all at once, a tangible marker of growth, both for him and for me. By evening, as I drove back home, I reflected on the past weeks, the arguments, the threats, the sleepless nights. It had been a journey filled with fear, tension, and uncertainty, but also a journey that reaffirmed the bond between us. I realized that letting go didn't mean losing. It meant trusting that the lessons I had imparted would guide him in ways that mere control never could. In the following weeks, our communication improved dramatically. Ethan called regularly, shared updates about work and life, and sought advice without coercion or hostility. Each conversation was a reminder that boundaries and respect form the foundation of enduring relationships. One evening, we video called to celebrate his first month in the new apartment. I could see his pride, his independence, and also his gratitude. "Mom," he said, smiling warmly, "I've learned so much since moving out. I didn't realize how much responsibility actually means. And I appreciate everything you did for me, especially saying no when you had to. It was hard, but it taught me a lot. I smiled, tears welling up. I'm proud of you, Ethan. Life will continue to challenge you, but if you remember this moment, the lessons, the love, the boundaries, you'll navigate it well. And always remember, I'm here for you, no matter what. In that moment, I understood that our journey had reached a turning point. The conflict over a gift, the threats, the emotional storm, it had all led to growth, understanding, and a strengthened bond. Love, I realized, isn't always about giving what is asked. It's about guiding, setting boundaries, and trusting that the lessons imparted will shape a better future. From that day on, our relationship transformed. Ethan became more responsible, more self-aware, and more appreciative of the love and guidance I had provided. And I, in turn, learned the delicate art of letting go, of trusting that a parent's influence continues even when physical proximity fades. The house felt lighter, warmer, filled with a renewed sense of harmony. I knew there would be future challenges, disagreements, and tests of patience, but the foundation of our relationship had been reinforced. Respect, love, and boundaries had triumphed over manipulation, entitlement, and fear. Looking back, I realized that the incident with the gift wasn't merely a conflict, it was a crucible. It tested the strength of our bond, revealed hidden truths, and ultimately shaped the kind of relationship we would have moving forward, one built on mutual understanding, trust, and the unshakable love between a mother and her son. Ethan stood at the threshold of adulthood, and I stood behind him, not as a controller, but as a guide. We had weathered the storm together, and in doing so, discovered that love, when coupled with boundaries, resilience, and honesty, could withstand even the fiercest of tempests. As I sit now in the quiet of my home, reflecting on the journey, I smile. The fear, the tension, the tears, they all had purpose. They had forged a stronger bond, a clearer understanding, and a deeper appreciation for the complexities of parenthood, growing up, and learning to let go. Ethan's laughter echoes from his apartment as I sip my tea, a sound that once seemed distant, now a reassuring reminder that love endures, even through trials. And in that, I find peace, a profound, unshakable peace that comes from knowing that sometimes, saying no is the greatest act of love one can offer.